1. Okay, so this isn't as creepy or out there as some of them, but we just moved our rooms around and it went from weird to nuts. A little setup for relevance. I live in the basement area of my family home. It's the house I grew up in, and recently my mom bought it. She can't live alone, so I became the proverbial pushing 40 dude living in my mother's basement, with my wife. It's good for us, because rent is cheap and it's a quiet neighborhood. It's good for my mom because she isn't as active as she used to be, and she needs help with finances and shopping and blah blah blah. The thing is, the place is old and we help maintain it, and as much as we get our own little basement with a shared kitchen space, I tell you this to make sure you understand, it is only my wife and I in this space. No one comes in and moves things around or anything like that. So about 1.5 years ago, I had some shelves over my headboard, convenient for phone storage and late-night water bottle access. One night, I had a brilliant idea to install one of those sticky push lights onto the underside of the shelf, so I could reach up and turn on a light if I needed to. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but what you need to know is they are small, round, half a hockey puck in size, and have an adhesive backing to stick to any surface. Inside the light are 5 LED bulbs that shine pretty bright when you press down on the center of the disc, as seen on TV stuff. I found one that worked in the closet when I moved in. The previous resident left a bunch of crap here, and one day decided to make use of it. So I used that little light for about 6 months until one night when I went to bed, I turned it off and the adhesive gave up. The little light fell directly on my nose. It's light and plastic, but it was jarring. I heard it hit my bedside table and a metal clunk of it hitting the bed frame. My wife asked what had happened. I told her, we laughed, and I said I'll superglue it back on in the morning. That was that. We went to bed. The next day, I had a cursory look around to find it. No luck. Figured it had rolled under the bed. I'll get it before bed. Searched before bed, climbed under the bed, looked under the mattress. No luck. No light. Over the course of a week, I searched everywhere around my bed for it. I couldn't find it. Laughed with my wife about glitches and dropped it. Every now and again, we would clean the room and look around, making a joke about finally finding that light. The box spring has some holes in the curiously thin cloth that is at the bottom of those things, so I figured it bounced up there somehow. So during this whole spring 2020 involuntary free time session, we decided to move my wife's streaming setup into the larger of the rooms, as her space needs are getting bigger, and put the bedroom and my computer in the smaller room. When we moved the bed, my wife was all, we will find that sticky light now for sure. No dice, not in the frame, in the box spring, or stuck in a hard-to-search spot. We emptied that room. It was nowhere to be seen. I gave up, lost to the place where single socks, and that last cookie you knew was in the jar and up. 2. Last fall, we attended an annual event at our local historical society, called the Graveyard Walk. It showcases people buried in the cemetery that have some sort of notoriety or interesting history by bringing local actors in to play the part of the person. They basically dress as the person and tell the person's story as if it's their own in the cemetery, on an evening close to Halloween. It's an interesting event, and they do a nice job. My parents arrived to the show a little late and stood off to the side, in the back, off the rest of the audience under a tree, so they wouldn't interrupt the show. After it was over, we walked over to them and said a quick hello, and then we all walked to our car to leave. When my parents got to their car, my dad realized his keys were gone. Assuming they fell out of his pocket, he retraced his steps back to the tree and searched everywhere. At this point, it was dark and most everyone had left, including the actors and the people running the event. One man who was still there noticed my dad looking for something and came over with his phone to help illuminate the ground, but other than that, no one was near the area. Besides walking about 50 feet to and from the car, my parents didn't move. They were right next to the tree, and no one else was near them. Everyone else was in the viewing area by the start of the show, and in front of my parents, but those keys were gone. After a while, my dad gave up looking and asked for a ride home. He assumed he was just missing the keys in the dark, and that he would find them easier in the daylight. The next morning, before he could go look for the keys again, my mom saw an email from the Historical Society. A set of keys had been found, and they were hoping to locate the owner. My parents were happy to hear this, but when they contacted the office to arrange for pickup, they were asked some questions. They wanted to know where they lost the keys and at what point in the evening, if they had interacted with the actors, etc. It turns out one of the actresses had a purse she was carrying as part of her costume, 40s flapper. The purse and the rest of the costumes used for the event came from a local theater company, and when she received it prior to and during the show, she swore it was empty. She inspected it for fun, but it was just a prop. As she was changing at home after the show, she heard a noise in her purse, and opened it to reveal a set of keys. She initially dismissed it, thinking as odd as it was that she didn't notice a set of keys in a tiny clutch purse. They must have been there and were part of the prop, and didn't actually belong to anyone. But something made her look at them again, and she realized they looked newer, and contained a grocery rewards card, and she had a strange feeling she should tell someone right then, and contacted the office just in case. She'd swear she never let the purse out of her sight. She arrived dressed, held it the whole 45-minute show, and left with it. And my parents were never anywhere near her. In fact, no one from the audience was within 30 feet of her. We have no idea how they got from my dad's pocket into a purse of an actress who was in the middle of a show when he arrived, and gone before he went to look for them. I can't help but think maybe they weren't meant to leave on time that night. Maybe if they hadn't been held up looking for the keys or driven themselves home, something awful would have happened. Three. I was in the shower doing my usual routine when it happened. I have a specific face wash I use every day, which helps me manage my acne. I had previously ran out of it and kept the old empty bottle on the same shower shelf as I usually keep my face stuff. The cap has been off for a while now, and I have a new bottle, so really, I'm not sure why I kept the empty bottle there, but I did. So on my small face product shelf, I had my old empty bottle with the cap off, my new bottle, as well as a third product. I was in the shower when I took the full bottle of face wash, took a bit in my hands, put it back on the shelf mechanically, and kept on massaging the product on my face, when I saw from the corner of my eye the empty bottle slip off the face product shelf and fall, which happens often since these shelves are so damn small. I bent down to pick it up, and when I got to put it back on its shelf, I realized the full bottle of face wash wasn't there, which really surprised me, since I had assumed the empty bottle had fell because of the full bottle nudging it over the edge of the shelf. I looked everywhere else in the small shower and couldn't find my face wash, until I opened the loud shower door and saw it on the bathroom countertop, 2 feet away from the shower. There's no way that I've put the bottle outside the shower even while being lost in thought, as it wouldn't have been a normal thing for me to do, and the effort to open the shower door and the noise alone would have made me aware of my actions. I still had the stuff on my face, and the old empty bottle had fallen off the shelf because I put the new bottle there without paying too much attention, which made the new bottle push the old over the shelf. There was also nothing else on the shelf and no replacement bottle, or anything else that would have pushed the empty bottle over the edge. Even weirder is the more I think about it, the less confident I am that I truly put on face wash in the shower. I feel intrusive memories come by me of putting face wash on before going in the shower, and leaving the bottle on the counter, but I never do that, and remember distinctly putting the face wash in the shower, and closing the lid on the bottle, putting it back on the shelf. It really feels like the more I think about it, the more my memories get foggy about it, and I feel these replacement memories come to me. I think I just experienced a glitch in the Matrix. 4. To start, I am not a believer, nor am I a skeptic of the supernatural, paranormal, or mystical type occurrences. This is because I have never personally experienced anything significant enough that has changed my current neutral stance on these topics. What I have experienced, however, is a strange set of coincidences with my sister that I would like to discuss, as I'm seeking some insight and personal experiences of any kind, related to my maybe not so strange at all situation. Most people have probably heard about strange coincidences that have occurred between siblings, mainly twins. But if you haven't, one example related to this twin phenomenon is the twins that gave birth on the same day, or the separate pair of identical twins that were adopted but randomly found each other 35 years later. Finally, I know that there were a set of twins who broke their arm on the same day at different locations. A coincidence? Yes, of course. Mystical and magical? Probably not, because I can only assume that there is a genetic component that connects twins in this way as well. I guess it just doesn't seem strange to me. My story in short. My sister and I are 2.5 years apart. We are not twins. We are close, but we grew apart into adulthood. Therefore, we don't regularly communicate. She is 25 and I'll be 28 in a few days. We have both been blessed as we were mostly injury-free and healthy growing up. However, when one of us did get hurt or sick, so would the other. I'm not talking about one catching a cold from the other's children. I'm talking about things like me getting extremely sick with a virus while in another country, and my sister being hospitalized that same day for something unrelated, a migraine, I think. This happened when I was 17 years old, and ever since then, whenever one of us got some kind of ailment worse than the common cold or a bump on the knee, the other did too. Enough for my parents to take notice. A couple years later, I got a killer bladder infection and went to the hospital. That same day, my sister got kidney stones while abroad in Spain. A couple years after that, I sliced my finger on a knife while working in a cafe. And on the same day, my sister injured the same finger on the same hand that I got a cut on. There have been other smaller things or times when something happens to her the day after or the day before me, but it's puzzling to me. Smaller things like we have our periods at the same time, even when we are apart. Last week on Thursday, my mom told me we went back to our old apartments, both 3 hours away from where we both currently are, me in Florida and her in New York, to get some belongings, even though we hadn't spoken to each other about it. Last month, we were both driving to separate places, and our GPS showed the same arrival time, even though, once again, we were in separate states. And I had randomly called her to tell her about a book on tape I was listening to. Here's a real kicker, or so I think. We are adopted. Our parents are white American and we are Chinese. I was adopted in Changsha, China in 1992, and she was adopted 2 years later from Wuhan, China. The point is, we are not biologically related sisters and we are not twins. Thoughts? Does anyone relate to or think that this isn't strange enough to warrant my out-of-this-world curiosity? 5. Okay, I'm still confused about this. First, some background information for context. I'm 28 years old. 2 days ago, I was sitting on the couch with my girlfriend, of 10 years, and her best friend Freya. We went to the same high school. We were talking about memories and classmates from that time, like what happened with them, career-wise, love life, etc. So we started talking about my ex-girlfriend. She was friends with my girlfriend's best friend. Suddenly I remembered my ex-girlfriend's cousin, 27 years old at the moment, who had a fling with my girlfriend's best friend at that time. I had this strange feeling of dread, like, oh damn, I forgot he passed away like 6 years ago. So before I started talking about him, I looked him up on Facebook. Turns out he's alive and kicking, thank God. So my brain made a mistake, but for the good. He looks happy, has a boyfriend now, and he's alive. So I started laughing and told my girlfriend and her friend, wow, I had this weird feeling that he had died, but I'm so glad I was wrong. My girlfriend looks at me with shock and says, no, you're not wrong, he died years ago. So I'm flabbergasted. I show my girlfriend his Facebook page with an update or photo uploaded every month for the past years, and recent stuff, not in memory of. Her jaw drops to the floor. Girlfriend's best friend doesn't really react to it, not confirming or denying it. So my girlfriend says, I remember his Facebook said in memory of, he passed away due to illness, and friends and family replied with grief and sadness. We were at your mom's house when we found out. Your brother and my brother were there too. Call them and ask if they remember. So I called my brother first. "Hey bro, do you remember Kris?" He replied, "Yeah, sure, that tall cousin of your ex's. What's up with him?" So I answered him without a question. "Do you remember something weird about him?" "You mean that he died a few years ago?" I lost my shit. Told my brother he was still alive, and my brother was very sure it happened. I even came up with a suggestion that maybe we got two guys mixed up. He said, "Nope, 100% sure it's him. Would be crazy coincidence if we all had the same mindfucking going on, right?" He was right. So I called my girlfriend's brother, my best friend. "Do you remember Kris?" So he replied, "Yeah, of course, the giant." "Remember something odd about him?" Yeah, I remember it turned out he was attracted to men." "Okay, that's it?" "And he died a few years back, cancer, right?" So I said, "Surprise, he didn't." "Yeah, he fucking did." But he didn't, so my girlfriend, my brother, my best friend, and I can all recall the moment we found out. My best friend suggested that maybe it was some kind of sick joke, but we all remember that his family replied on his Facebook with great sadness. Or maybe it was some kind of symbolic death, that he was reborn. But it didn't make sense. He already came out before this news, and again, friends and family replied with grief. About the death, not the coming out. Okay, here comes the second twist, coincidence or not. This whole situation took place in 1 hour, so I go back on Facebook, see a message that someone else died that I knew from back then, young guy, 27 years old, passed away about an hour ago. Like stories and signals got mixed up. I can't wrap my head around this whole situation, seriously. What happened? I sent him a message, no reaction yet. Too bad I can't even see if he read it or not, because we're not Facebook friends anymore. I don't even know if this is the case, but I'm assuming I won't be able to see if he has read my message or not. I can't recall when his updates started popping up. That makes this shit extra weird. I didn't delete him from Facebook, and the last thing I remember seeing from him was the post that was about his death. If something popped up after that post, I would have been aware of him being alive before this weird situation. I can still see his public posts, though, and scroll back to when he died. Estimated, not sure exactly when this was. Nothing out of the ordinary. I saw a lot of recent pictures with him and his boyfriend, and you can see them both getting older, so these aren't old snaps. I'm starting to feel like a creep investigating this guy, so I'm letting this rest until I get a reaction. If he does react, I'll report back. Update. He messaged me back, guys. We talked a bit about our lives in the past few years. He's doing great. He is still a cohesive person with no signs of mental illness whatsoever. I told him that I remembered the day I went on Facebook and saw messages that he passed away. That me and my family were in shock. He says that he has used Facebook very frequently for years, and has never seen anything like that, nor has he heard about it. Maybe you guys confused me with someone else. No, dude, we were all sure we didn't. He has no answers, and now I just laughed it off, so he wouldn't be creeped the fuck out. He probably is, though. So, guys, I'm sorry that there's no resolution to this story. The show is over. He isn't insane. He's alive. He's never been hacked. Facebook never killed him off digitally. His friends didn't fuck him over. It never happened. I'm off to pick up my girlfriend, best friend, and my brother. Time to get a checkup at the psychiatrist. Maybe we'll get a group discount. 6. There are people living in my attic. I'm aware that sounds odd, but it's an ongoing joke between my husband and I. Oft things happen in my house that we've bought and lived in for 2 years now. I'm not sure where to begin my "no, you're just crazy" story, but I'll just start with examples. Example 1. I was having my bridal shower at my new home, getting things ready, set up and hung up. I invited my next-door neighbor to come help me hang streamers. We were using the same roll of Scotch tape. Fast forward about an hour and a half in, and I lost the tape. The oddest part about it is I remember exactly where I sat the tape down, which is exactly the first place I went to pick it back up. But it's gone. No big deal, we go searching. But the search went on for about an hour on its own. Couch cushions under the couch, looking through junk drawers in hopes for a new roll of tape. I even checked the trash and fridge just in case I've completely airbrayed myself. We give up and she goes home and I'm just tired and over it. The next morning I ran out to buy more tape and some odds and ends. I come home, I get ready to start back at it, and it's back in the place where I knew I left it. But I remember having laid it on its side. I found it sitting upside, right? I was so confused, and I messaged my neighbor and told her I found it. She asked me where, and I told her exactly where I thought I put it down. She told me there's no way. We even moved the table I sat it on and cleared it off to nothing. And I told her I agreed. There was just no way. I asked my husband, and he just said he had nothing to do with it, and explained that he tries to stay far away from whatever project I'm doing, so he has no hand in screwing things up. But it was just so odd that I thought I was going into some sort of stress episode with all of the wedding planning. Example 2. In the beginning of my crazy attic people conspiracy, I kept it to myself. I never told my husband about my silly thought because it was more of a daydream and stress coping mechanism to help me feel better about losing my mind with the wedding. Well, my husband comes home from work and goes through his normal routine of shower, video games, and dinner. While we're eating, he asks me, "What did you put up in the attic?" And I just paused and stared at him like I was trying to act normal, while trying to figure out if what I heard is what he said. And he was honestly asking, and I asked him if he was fucking with me. I was close to angry, but more concerned than anything. 1, you need a ladder to reach the attic access, which is just too much going on for me. If anything, I would ask him if I really needed something put up there. 2, I have said nothing about the attic, nothing. So coincidence is the only fact that the matter could be. I reply nothing and ask why in the world would he ask that. He replied that the board covering the access was shifted. It's a square, and it was only partly covering the opening. And this made-up conspiracy that I concocted in my own head just pinged into reality with one sentence. This was the night I explained my attic people issue to my husband. And to feed into my batshit, my husband explains that he had the same thought but never said anything because it was just, well, fucking silly. Example 3. I quit smoking, from cigarettes to vape. I had an expensive vape that I dropped, and it ended up breaking but still usable with a slight jerry-rig to it. I specifically remember dropping it in between my entertainment table and an old Coca-Cola cooler we have for decoration in our living room. Being lazy, I just kept it there, remembering specifically that it's probably safer there. I have 5 dogs. I used another older vape that I was previously using and just switched back over to that. Well, while cleaning, I remember my vape there and moved the cooler aside to clean and vacuum under it and grab my vape. Well, the vape is gone. It's still gone. I never mentioned it to my husband because I just don't know. I really didn't need to. Why would he care? I asked him if he'd seen my expensive vape, and he said not for a while now. There are more of things that happen. I can assure you there are no attic people, and that we are in our late 20s and, for the most part, in the right of our minds. We have 5 dogs, and if there were people, there's just no way around them. I honestly look at it as more a glitch in the Matrix scenario, only because these issues and off things that happen are actual tangible items. If it were only me having these things happen, then I wouldn't have spent the time writing this all out for all of you to consider what a loon I am. But it's not just me. And don't get me started on the tangled lines and lost time between my husband and I. 7. First experience was about 12 years ago. I was a party animal in my 20s, and also liked to get dressed up when going out. This particular night I was wearing a French cuff shirt with cufflinks, a watch, a ring, and a chain bracelet. I had always prided myself on the fact that I don't lose things when I drink. You know the friend that always lost their cellar keys? I never lost anything. To this day I clearly remember, despite being drunk, that I took off all the jewelry when I got home and put it in my pants pocket, undressed and put all the clothes on an armchair in my room and promptly passed out. The next morning when I woke up, I started to put everything away and was perplexed to find the pocket empty. All the pockets empty. I frantically searched because the cufflinks had specific emotional value to me. Having been gifted by a family friend I witnessed pass on from cancer. After frantically searching, I called my sister to help me. I told her what happened and both of us checked my pants. Empty. We both looked around for about half an hour before giving up. I was so frustrated and bewildered I thought, WTF, where's my stuff? And grabbed the pants that I still had not put back in the closet. Out of sheer exacerbation, checked the pocket I had put the items in, and miraculously, there they were. Everything was there. Not just the jewelry, but some change as well I had left in the pocket. I called my sister, and she came back amazed, and concurred that yes, she had checked the pants herself, and they were empty. Fast forward about 11 years. I am married, and wear my wedding ring daily, but take it off each night when I sleep, then put it back on in the morning when I get ready. Like I said before, I pride myself in not losing things. And part of the reason why I rarely misplace things is because I have a very specific place for all my things. Don't get me wrong, I sometimes drop my keys on the kitchen island instead of the side table, when my hands are full and forget for a minute where I put them. But 99% of the time I put things in the exact same spot every time. This day, I think it was November of 2018. I couldn't find my ring in the morning. Again, as with the other story, I was perplexed, because I remembered taking it off and leaving it in its place on my sink vanity. After searching a few minutes, I figured it will show up and headed off to work because I was going to be late. It was cold here in the Northeast, so I wore my gloves and hat. Arriving at work, I put them in their place on the corner of my desk and busily got to work. The only other person in the office in an adjacent room was my office manager. After a few hours of working at my desk, I got up to make a coffee, and when I walked back into my office, I found my ring sitting on top of my hat and gloves, squarely in the middle as if consciously placed there. I asked my office manager if she had found it and put it there, but she had no clue what I was talking about. Other things have disappeared that shouldn't. For example, a black belt I wear, or wore, almost daily, randomly can't be found, and would not have come off anywhere other than in my house, but haven't resurfaced yet. When and if they do, I'm sure it will be someplace right out in the open. In any case, these are two inexplicable examples of things disappearing on me and reappearing. I'm wondering if there is just a cognitive block and my brain is playing a trick on itself, or if we are subconsciously, accidentally or otherwise, capable of crossing dimensional boundaries without knowing it if that dimension is so close to ours. The latter is my running theory anyway. There's no doubt that there are infinite realities or parallel dimensions. I might consider the former, but my sister was a witness. Judging by all the glitch posts, I am not alone. What are your thoughts? 8. So when I was a teen, the summer just before I turned 17, I worked at a fast food place. There was a new Sonic's that just opened down the street, so it pretty much stole a good chunk of this place's business for the time, so we weren't always super busy. We had a few regulars and people that just wanted a cheap burger, both in price and quality. We'd get to know our regulars pretty well, never really names, but some feature or a lot of times their order. As I'm in the back working in the grilling line, I look up to the order screen and see an order we see every day right around the same time. A double cheeseburger on quarter-pounder buns, plus special sauce and a hamburger nothing special, which was pretty much just a patty on a piece of lettuce in a salad box. That was the order of a guy we call Brown Dog. He was a guy that always came in with running shorts on, and a big brown dog tied to a pole outside. He'd eat the burger and give his dog the extra patty while sitting out on a bench on the other side of the parking lot, before he jogged down the street. We make the order and send it up. Day goes by as normal. A little bump in customers near lunch, then just a slow but steady trickle. Near the end of shift, the manager walks out of her office and says that the cashier for the closed shift just called out, and she couldn't get anyone to come in, so asks if any of us wanted to pick up some hours. I volunteer since I am trained on the register. This was before it was all touchscreen with pictures. And besides, that overtime was rare, so yeah, any chance for a little extra cash in my check. As the shift change happens, I move from the back to the front, get my till set up, and prepare for a few more hours of delightful customer service. Everything's normal. Head out to mop the lobby for a bit, wipe the tables down. If someone walks in, go to the counter and help them. All that sort of thing. Until roughly 2-ish hours before closing. It was getting dark outside, and I'd resorted to checking the clock every 5 minutes, hoping for an hour to have passed since I last looked. The bell for the door chimes. I go from the lobby to the counter, and have to double take when I see who's standing on the other side of the counter. His brown dog. So in my 4 months of working there, he's shown up every day, but only once a day, on a late morning jog. I guess maybe he's just decided he really needed a double hit of the cheap greasy goodness of our burgers. He orders the exact same thing as every day, the very thing he ordered that morning. Weird. I turn to bag his stuff as it comes down the line. As I turn, I feel a little lightheaded, like when you jump up way too fast. I give this man his order and he takes the bag. I feel the sudden onset of a headache. I normally suffer from migraines and headaches, maybe every few days or weeks. Nothing I haven't learned to deal with by taking a few Tylenol or something. He thanks me and walks out the door. I rub my forehead with the back of my hand as I walk around the counter to finish mopping. I'm starting to feel a little nauseous, which happens if I get a migraine. But normally I get an aura, as it's called, before I get a migraine. I kinda get the feeling of one coming. I've never had one set on so quickly. I pick up the mop and start to work, but mostly I'm just using the mop to keep my balance. I glance out the window, and in the last bit of sunlight as the parking lot lights, I see Brown Dog sitting on his bench. But it's not a brown dog sitting in front of him. It was a white-furred dog. It stood out against the ebbing light. Suddenly my head throbs and there is a stinging just behind my eyes. I close them and bring my hands to them to rub, for all the good that could have done. I must have made a sound or something because my manager walks out to the lobby. She's kinda in a panic, as down my face and shirt is blood from a sudden bloody nose. She grabs some napkins from one of the tables and hands them to me. I take them and pinch my nose hard. I'm able to get the bleeding stopped quickly enough, but the headache doesn't go away as easily. It was like someone had put my head in a vice and was pounding a drum beside my ears while there is a stabbing pain. She walks me into the office to sit down. After some breathing, I'm able to get it all to just a dull throbbing. My manager decided that since it was almost closing, I should go ahead and leave. I'd already helped them out through the dinner rush. I wearily nod and grab my keys. I make my way out to the parking lot, but the world is spinning. I was so dizzy. I didn't know it at the time, as I was just 16, but the feeling was really similar to when you've had way too much to drink. I stand there in the parking lot squinting, trying to block out the headlights and streetlights as they just made my head hurt more. I didn't see my car, though. I drove a shitty little red Chevy Aveo. I didn't see it at all. I don't know how long I stood in the parking lot, swaying and confused. I knew I drove. I had my car keys. I'd just gotten that car. There's no way I wouldn't have driven. I drove everywhere because it was like a new toy. Eventually, the manager walks out to check on me. I haven't moved. I remember mumbling something about someone stealing my car. I'm led back inside, and my parents called. Since I was under 18, I'd needed to give my parents' number to the store in case of emergencies. Sat in the lobby, my head in my hands, trying to get the pounding to stop. A short time later, I heard my dad's voice. I look up and see him. He helps me up from the booth, and he thanks the manager. As we walked outside, I was mumbling about my car being stolen. My stepmom gets out of my dad's truck. She takes my keys from my hand and exchanges some words with my dad. I'm helped into the truck as my stepmom walks to a Jeep, not my car. Dad gets in the truck and we pull out of the parking lot. He tries to talk to me, but I'm trying to look behind us to see if my stepmom got into that Jeep, or if I'd maybe parked in the parking lot beside the restaurant's parking lot. I knew I hadn't. It doesn't matter. I can't see anything in the sea of headlights, even more than what's really there as I'm seeing double. I settle into the seat looking at the floorboards, my head in my hands. As I said, I had migraines a lot, still have them from time to time. I know that pain. This was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I know, I woke up in my bedroom, still in my uniform from work sans my shoes. I felt a little groggy, but no throb as I sat up. I walk, making my way to the kitchen where my parents are. They ask how I am. I see it's past noon, but my dad tells me not to worry. The manager called and told me not to come in that day. I have a very serious talk with my parents on if I tried drugs or drinking. I tell them no. They had no reason not to believe me. I was a good kid. At some point, I peek outside and spot my shitty little Chevy Aveo in the driveway. The next day, I go to work, feeling back to normal. When I see a very familiar order on the screen, I rush out into the lobby, under the pretense of a bathroom break, and outside in the summer sun is a brown dog, his leash looped over the pole. I have no explanation. I didn't drink at the time, I didn't do drugs, there was no history of mental health issues in my family. I feel like maybe for a time I was just... I still don't even know. Like seeing a slightly different version of reality or something. 9. I, 25 male, recently have moved into a new house. The house has a landscaped yard, and with it came a water fountain. This water fountain is a standalone one, and holds probably about 10 gallons of water. Every morning I wake up and do my usual watering of the yard and garden, and always fill the water fountain up to replace the water that had evaporated the previous day. Recently, I have had some WTF moments with this fountain, and it finally hit me that this is more than just a shrug-it-off situation. Since I moved in, there have been times when the fountain is suddenly bone dry. Since this started, I have been very aware of this damn fountain, making sure it's filled, etc., so the pump and motor doesn't burn up. Every time this has happened, I try to make sense of how the water was gone very randomly. I could go a week without any issues of disappearance of the water. When the water does disappear, it's so random, never the same time of day, it makes no sense. I have looked all over this fountain for any possible leaks or cracks in the cement. The hose that's attached to the pump doesn't go near any edges or sides of this fountain, so even if the hose was leaking, it would literally leak right back into the fountain. I don't have any animals to possibly drink up all the water. The only animals I've seen drink from the fountain are birds, hummingbirds to be exact. My yard is closed off by a huge wooden gate, and there's a very tall, secure fence that perimeters the entire property. Plus, I live in a neighborhood that's very populated, so any big wildlife is a no-go. We have bunnies all over the place, but there's no way they could get up in this fountain without drowning. I've even experimented with this since my findings. I filled it up and let it run without filling up for a couple days, making sure the days I picked are sunny and high temperatured as well. The fountain can go about 4 days without being filled up, and still run without any possible damage to the pump, and that's with temperatures above 90°F outside. This is where it freaked me out. I had a friend over last week. We were walking through my yard and having a good conversation when I noticed that the fountain was bone dry, which I had filled up the evening before. So super weird, but I didn't think much of it since it had been happening so often. I mentioned what had been going on to my friend while grabbing the hose from across the yard, which, at the time, my friend seemed to be very intrigued about. His phone started ringing, which he had left in the house, so while he ran into the house to grab his phone, I made my way over to the fountain, when out of nowhere the fountain was completely full of water. I mean full of water. More than I usually fill it up, and the pump wasn't working. It was plugged in, but not running. I had no idea what to think. My friend came out to join me while I stood puzzled, staring at this filled to the brim fountain. He asked me what I was doing, and all I could get out of my mouth was, "What the fuck?" He asked me what I was talking about. What was so weird with the fountain? I looked at him, so confused because we had been talking about this right before he got a phone call. He had been standing right next to the fountain while we started talking about it, so he was very aware that there was no water in it. And now he's acting like we never had the conversation, or I never mentioned it to him. I asked him why he was messing with me. He kept telling me over and over again that he had no idea what I was talking about, and started to get agitated with me. All I could think of doing was just saying, "Never mind, it's nothing." And with that response, he started up a new conversation about cars or something. Later on in the day, he asked me about the fountain situation and why I was acting so weird. I told him what I thought I had told him before, about what had been going on with it since I moved in. He repeated the exact wording he had said before like clockwork. His phone rang and he answered it immediately, got up from the table we were eating from, and continued his conversation elsewhere. When he came back, I asked him what he thought about the fountain situation. His response? What fountain? I can't explain this. I can't let it go. It's been torturing me. What happened that day? What keeps happening with that fountain? Does anyone have any theories? 10. So I have my own number saved as a contact in my phone because I can't remember my own number, and it's just convenient. But around 4 months ago, I started getting voicemails from that contact. The first one that it sent was completely silent. I thought my phone must have been buggy or something, which honestly isn't surprising since it's a cheap one, and I've dropped it a few times. The next day, the voicemail disappeared. I thought I might have imagined it or something like that. A few days later, I got another voicemail at the exact same time I had sent my friend one, and turns out it's the same as what I had sent my friend. It disappeared the next day as well, and for every time subsequently. Sometime after this one, it happened again, but my voice was slightly distorted. Not exactly horror movie-like, so I wasn't too concerned, but I did think it was weird that my voice was slightly buggy. Like I was losing signal while on a call. It stopped for a while, but another one came about a week after the last. This one actually scaring me a little. It wasn't silent or my own voicemail, and it was sent late at night. It was so quiet I almost couldn't hear it, but there was definitely a man's voice on the other side, saying things that I just couldn't decipher. It was English, just not clear enough for me to know exactly what he was saying. At this point, I'm somewhat questioning my own sanity, considering how the voicemails disappear every time, but the next one I hear confirms there's something wrong, and I'm not imagining it. I was actually anticipating this one, being so on edge that I started sleeping at my friend's apartment to be sure that the next time it happened, I could prove to someone that it's true. Again, late at night I got a voicemail, this one making me decide to just delete the contact and remember my number from now on. I ran into my friend's room and asked him to listen with me. That this is why I, out of the blue, decided to crash at his place. I play it loud in case it would be similar to last time's extremely quiet one, but it's completely clear. The same voice comes on and immediately is reciting my personal information, just monotonously saying my full name, date of birth, where I was born, my old address. Not sure why it wasn't my current, but I'm actually glad for that, etc., with a high-pitched ringing tone under it. Then when it says my friend's name, I stop the voicemail and look to my friend, who is equally as freaked out. He starts trying to make sense of it after a minute of silence, saying things like it might be some bot, maybe someone's hacked into your phone. But he just stops trying and we freak out over what to do for a bit. Next day comes around, I check my phone and the voicemail is gone, like always. When my friend wakes up, I ask him if he remembers that, and he says of course. I show him how it always disappears and tell him that I thought I might have been imagining it this whole time, and he reassures me I haven't. He tells me that I should just delete the contact, and also says I should have deleted it way before. If freaky stuff still happens, try going to a repair shop or some expert on these things, and to secure all my accounts, I, of course, delete the contact, and ever since I did, nothing weird has happened. I haven't gotten a single strange voicemail or anything bad happened to me. Just to update, I've taken my phone to some tech people and they said there's absolutely nothing wrong that they can find with my phone, but I've done all the necessary things in case it was hacked. Which I kinda already ruled out considering I don't use my full name for anything. Not even my bank details, so it's unlikely they could find it. Someone suggested I contact my network provider, and after emailing them and getting my voicemail history, I found that none of the creepy ones show up, so I don't have any answers or any idea how to explain all this. 11. This isn't a huge event or anything. It's just something that has me a little spooked. I'm in college, and my brother is a senior in high school. We both live with our folks, but they work during the day, and both of us are currently laid off. So we spend a lot of time at home alone together. We usually just leave each other to our own devices, as we both have very few places in the house where we tend to be at any given time. For me, that's either my room or on the couch in the living room, For him, that's either his room or the computer room. I find that he alternates between his two spots pretty frequently, so it's a bit of a Schrodinger's cat scenario of which place he's in at any given time. He spends most of his time on YouTube, and he never wears headphones, so I can tell which room he's in by whatever room from which there's the muffled sound of an enthusiastic gaming YouTuber emitting. It's also important that I clarify that his room and the computer room are on opposite corners of the house. One is on the bottom northwest, the other is on the upstairs southwest. Our rooms are immediately next to each other, and the computer room is immediately at the bottom of the stairs. Yesterday I exited my room and heard the usual noise that indicated he was in his room. Footsteps and a muffled YouTuber. I specifically remember confirming to myself that he was in his room. However, as I stepped off the stairs, I heard him in the computer room, indicated by the creaking of the chair and the muffled YouTuber. I never would think that I'd be one to notice such a thing if it were to happen, but to my surprise, I immediately noticed and rushed back up the stairs to see down the hallway that his door was open and his room empty. Spooked, I checked on him in the computer room, and he gave me the typical brotherly, "What's up?" as though nothing was wrong. I told him I was just checking on him and joked to myself that it was a glitch in the Matrix as I got breakfast. Now, my first instinct is to try to find a logical solution for this, but I can't. Assuming his door opened without him opening it, which has happened before, our house is from the 70s, and the top floor is at a bit of a slant, and air pressure changes can cause our doors to open on their own sometimes. It's possible that the sound of his phone traveled through the vents. However, from how the vents are laid out, the sound would have to pass through a guest room, our parents' bedroom, and the living room to travel from the computer room to his room. And by then, it would be too faint for me to have heard it so clearly through his door. There's also no other way from one floor to the other besides the stairs, and I made it from his room to the bottom of the stairs in one trip. He couldn't have gotten down there in that time without passing me. I also know for a fact that there's no secret passage or anything, as his room used to be my room, and out of the two of us, I'd be the one who'd find it. I don't know how such a path would lead from his room to downstairs anyway. He has a Google Home in his room, but I'd recognize the voice he has it set on. And I've never seen a Google Home respond to nothing before. I'm sure it's somehow possible to rig it up to play the audio from whatever video he's watching on his phone. But I don't know why he'd do that if he wasn't in the room. He's never done anything like that before, and he's not the type to play pranks. It was too low quality anyway, like phone speakers, not the home speaker. So I've concluded that my brother with no physics knowledge has an unprecedented ability to teleport at will via quantum entanglement, joke, or the program loaded him in two places at once by mistake, or it really is programmed as a Schrodinger's cat scenario, except it glitched and didn't determine the final outcome the first time it was measured. Like as if the cat was meowing a split second before I opened the box to find it dead, or it played the audio without loading in the model. Or maybe I'm losing it, I don't know. Whatever happened, it wasn't a big deal as no one was harmed, so it's actually kind of fun to speculate. 12. My best friend, Audrey, was spending the night at my house. We woke up in the morning and decided to make breakfast. We both remember that these next few moments happened exactly the same. We walked to my kitchen. I was wearing a large white t-shirt and no pants. She had her green yoga joggers and her black tank top. We sat on opposite ends of the kitchen. I was on the kitchen counter by the toaster. She was leaning against the sink, and we kept saying, "I don't know, what do you want to eat?" back and forth, just being annoying and having fun. Then I announce I'm going to have cereal and toast. Audrey says, "I don't like milk and cereal, I'm good." I nod and reach for the bread and make my toast. I pull out the last two slices and leave the end piece in the bag. Audrey suddenly jumps as I go to throw the bag away and says, "Ooh, wait, can I have the booty bread slice?" I bust out laughing. I've never heard someone call it that before. "The what?" I ask. "Booty bread, you know, the end of the bread. That's what my family called it growing up. I'd always ask my mom for it." We laugh. I give her the booty bread. Good day altogether. We have the same memory, the details are all there. But there's only one slight difference. Fast forward about a year, we're back in my kitchen hanging out. I go to throw away the last slice of bread again, but this time I start laughing and say, Hey, Audrey, do you want the booty bread? She starts laughing too, but keeps looking at her phone. I asked again, no, really, do you want it? No, ew, why would I? But you said you loved the booty bread piece. You used to always ask to eat it. That's where I learned that you call it booty bread. No, my family calls it the booty bread, but I hate the end piece. We stare at each other, genuine confusion. We start bickering, and I start freaking out because I know my memory happened, and she is insisting she remembers watching me throw the bag away. She doesn't remember telling me about how her family calls it booty bread, and by chance, I just started listening to a podcast about the multiverse bubble theory, and different timelines and just all kinds of rabbit hole type reading. I panicked and yelled, "A bubble collided and now you're not my Audrey." Audrey was genuinely confused, and after I explained, we made it a running joke. Whenever she upsets me or something, I'll say, "I wish I had the other Audrey." Or she'll say, "Sorry, I can't be Universe A, Audrey." We laugh every time, but there's a slight second where we both share an uncomfortable silence. 13. First off, I am an analyst and programmer for an automotive company. To everyone confused on my job description, I am both a system analyst and a developer, because there's only 5 of us in a team. Anyways, we had a Zoom meeting, so I thought, last Monday. It's the usual team meeting where we talk about our progress, challenges, and clarifications we had. So it starts off from topics about our client support and goes off to dev projects, and my boss recommended to just use one programming language so that dev support is easier when one coworker is on leave. 2 of my coworkers suggested we use PHP. I remember this discussion very strongly because, in my opinion, PHP is a dying program language. Anyways, I didn't go against it since my boss is in favor of it. I searched the PHP syntax of integrating the API to the ERP. We're using SAP for later reference. I read a GitHub project for the integration I'm looking for. I saved both the syntax and the link in my computer notes. Fast forward to yesterday, we held a team meeting again. It starts off again and my boss asking about client support. It's not the same as last meeting's convo. And goes again on recommending that we use one programming language for easier dev support. 2 of my coworkers once again suggested we use PHP. The flow of conversation is different. I thought they're uselessly opening the topic again, so I said that there's already a project in GitHub that we could use. I went to my notes, but I can't find the link I saved, which is odd. I just searched the GitHub project and copied the link and give it to them. One of my coworkers said in awe that he thought I preferred another programming language. I said yes, but I already kind of read and reviewed my PHP skills after the last meeting. They all seemed confused on what I'm saying. I kept insisting that we had a meeting about it last Monday. They laughed and said that I must have been talking to our third-party vendor secretly. I thought they're just pranking me and all, and just let it go. My junior coworker chatted me just today for the GitHub link, because he didn't save it. I sent it and asked what's the prank all about yesterday. He replied he doesn't know if it's a prank, but he's not in the meeting that Monday, but he was there. I searched our team chat history and there's no mention of any Zoom meeting invite last Monday, nor any deleted messages from my boss or from anyone. I just ran through over and over again, but my search regarding PHP was not in my browser history list until yesterday. I swear it happened. I even remembered a few snippets from the PHP syntax. Can someone tell me what happened, or if they have been through that kind of situation? Thank you very much. 14. When I was in community college, I had a speech class at 8 a.m. in a building across the street. So like usual, I got ready, got into the rinky-dink-ass truck I owned at the time, and set off for class at 7:53. I specifically remember it being 7:53 because I checked my phone several times to make sure I was on schedule. I came to a stop at a red light, looked out at the campus across the street, and zoned out for a moment. Then I looked back at the light and realized that it had turned green, that 2 vehicles had spontaneously appeared at the intersection on my left and right, and that their drivers were staring at me. Slightly curious about the attention I was getting, I glanced between the drivers and drove across the street. I pulled into one of the few remaining parking spots in front of the building, surprised by the number of students that had seemingly arrived early. I walked inside and up a flight of stairs to the second floor. I opened the door to the classroom and found my professor in the middle of a lecture and all of my fellow students staring at me. The professor turned to me. "Well, get in here," he snapped. "You're already this damn late and now you're interrupting me and disturbing the class. Shut the door and sit down, now." Completely confused, I walked down the aisles and sat down at my seat as the professor continued his lecture. I pulled out my cell phone and checked the time, thinking the professor had perhaps woken up on the wrong side of bed and had gotten miffed over me somehow walking in 1 or 2 minutes late. According to my phone, it was 8:33 a.m. There were only 17 minutes left in class. My world stopped right then and there. My professor kept talking, but I wasn't hearing a word of it. I looked at the clock above his chalkboard, 8:33 a.m. I googled the current time, 8:33 a.m. I sat back in my seat in disbelief. How could almost 40 minutes have just disappeared? But it doesn't stop there. After class, I apologized to the professor for being late and walked back to my truck. The moment I turned the key in the ignition, every electrical system in the vehicle went absolutely haywire. The clock in the old stock radio displayed innumerable times. The radio turned itself on and flipped through innumerable channels. The alert signs in the dashboard flashed 1,000,000 times. And my gauges flipped back and forth so hard, I swore their small orange arms would fly off. Freaked beyond relief, I turned the truck off and back on, only to find that everything had returned to normal. The clock displayed the correct time, the radio and dashboard lights remained off, and my gauges were stable and accurate. To this day I have no idea where that time went, but I can't help but wonder if the reason that the drivers were staring at me was that my truck and I spontaneously appeared at the stoplight, after spontaneously disappearing 40 minutes earlier. Because I know someone may guess that I had somehow experienced what would probably have gone down as the world's strongest absence seizure, I suppose I should add that I had a CT scan of my brain months later for unrelated reasons, and was given a completely clean bill of health. I have also never experienced anything like this again. This isn't the only paranormal event I've experienced, but I will save the rest for another time. 15. Husband and I had local security company install inside and outside cameras when we moved. Our 2-year-old son had an obsession with opening doors, so we thought we'll install one camera in the living room for peace of mind. The camera is behind the couch, close to the corner, where I sit and knit, cross-stitch, etc. But you can see most of the room still. But you can see when someone enters it. It's installed high enough that even if you crawl, we can see you. Okay. So I'm sitting there attempting to knit a hat. It's about 11 p.m., hubby and son are in bed. I'm feeling wide awake still. I'm geeking out at how terrible the hat looks. Frustrated that it looked terrible, I remember thinking, I'll decide tomorrow whether to finish this disaster. I throw it in my basket next to the couch, and then leave to read in bed. Next morning, son goes to Granny's. My husband and I decide to wake and bake after brunch. Getting ready to eat some gummies, I'm like, ooh, would you bring out my knitting project? 'Cause that would be bomb to knit while stoned. He brings it out, and I'm dumbfounded. He hands me a fully completed hat. It was almost perfect. I was shocked. Has he learned to knit? And knit better than me? I asked him all this and more. He swore that I was losing it, and he would never, ever even have the desire to knit. So I'm like, okay, what happens when I look at our living room camera? He was like, yeah, do it, because you're wrong. I didn't touch it. Security cameras from 11 p.m. the previous night showed me throw my hat out of camera view. It's a little basket by the end of the couch, blocked from view, but you can see the carpet beyond that. Even if he crawled to the basket and knitted it, put it back, I would see him in the room, no possible way to get it without me seeing you. So I watch the entire thing sped up. Doesn't jump, just moves at like 16 times speed or something. He never enters the room once in the 10 hours of footage I watched. Not once. Our son never even enters the room. I never enter the room and leave after 11 p.m., and yet I was holding a fully finished hat. Guys, on the security camera before I set it down, you can literally see me chuckling to myself at what a disaster it is. And I had not finished it. I accused him of tampering with the footage. He obviously could see I was frantic and freaking out. He's like, okay, maybe you did finish it, blah blah. I tell my hubby all about glitches in the Matrix on Reddit. I'm like, oh shit, check the carbon monoxide. These people talk about hallucinogenic mold and stuff. I need an MRI. Hubby is so kind, he's like, okay, if that will make you feel better. And has a guy come to the house Monday for a carbon monoxide check and whatever else they do. Cost us $190. Best money I've ever spent. We were all good. Nothing in the air is poisonous. Okay, brain tumor, that's it. Got into my doctor around 2 months later, March 2019. Told him the story. He doesn't want to order an MRI. Sends me to a psychiatrist. Fast forward to May 2020. Hit my head on a rock while exiting a boat. Bled a little. Needed MRI, no tumor. I am very healthy. WTF? I know I didn't knit that. To this day I cannot knit even half as well as the bottom of the hat was. It was completed when he handed it to me. A few pieces of yarn needed to be trimmed, but that was it. I didn't knit that freaking hat. Do I still have the hat? No. It became a point of contention between my husband and I. Long story short, didn't want to take it to Goodwill. Burned it in our fire pit instead. Avada Kedavra, hat. 16. This happened just last week. My dad was flying out to his parents' house on Tuesday. On Sunday, we had just finished watching our movie, as we do every night as our hangout time, and headed upstairs for bed. However, I decided to make some food, and he wanted to make his own too. He suggested we each together and watch a short. I told him I was going to eat in my room. It was midnight, and I was sleepy anyway. Plus, we were planning on hanging out for a bit on Monday as well after he finished packing. He was dejected, and I thought he was just being dramatic as usual. Something just nagged at me. I felt so guilty. I never feel guilty about saying no. He's a grown man. If he wants to watch something, he can without me. But my conscience wouldn't let up, so I said sure, and we watched a little something and went to bed. Mom came to my room Monday morning and said she was taking him to the airport. Apparently Spirit had changed his flight, and he just happened to check his emails and find out it was moved back a day. Nothing weird. Spirit's sketchy anyway. Kind of sad we didn't get to get burritos that night, but whatever. And then he called when he landed. He said that the head flight attendant told the passengers they'd be blasting the air conditioning for a moment before they had to turn off one of the engines. Like it was dead or breaking or something. But whatever it was, it failed, and that's clearly not good. The runway was cleared for them, they had priority, but they're still a ways away, and they were over a lake when that happened. He said the plane banked multiple times so steeply, like almost sideways, and he knew he was going to die. He was peaceful about it. He knew it'd be okay, and he knew God, etc. would provide for the family. And he was ready. He'd been in dangerous situations before, but he never had that feeling of knowing he was about to die. Obviously he's alive and well now, but I really can't shake that feeling that some glitch or timeline or dimension or something changed ever so slightly that it saved his life. It would make perfect sense that whatever force is out there would press me to just spend a few more minutes with my dad who was going to die the next day. Imagine how I'd feel if I didn't. I know this really has no fact to it, but I've always had gut feelings and vibes that rarely turn out to be wrong. You know? 17. As a background, I've had paranormal experiences as a kid, all from seeing and hearing to the point where it became natural, as I do think I'm somewhat sensitive to such things. As I got older, it slowly went away. It did help not paying attention to it, which leads to this. About a month and a half ago, on a Monday, I was meeting my mother at my apartment complex to drop off equipment I left at her house having done some work there. She was on her way to work, so this was around 6:30 a.m. I took the elevator down to the ground floor. The door leads out to a parking garage. I turn right, walk 40 yards which leads to the side street, down that street to the front of the building. Now, upon walking from the parking garage just before I hit the street to turn right and walk towards the front, I see a man walking up the street, passing me in a grey hoodie, black shorts, and distinct black socks with white stripes on top. I vividly remember the socks and shorts, as it was pretty chilly this morning. Probably going for a morning run. Okay. So to get to the front waiting for Mom, and note, there are apartment complexes across the main street from the front of my building. So, not 3 minutes later, I look up and see the same man walking from those apartments. Cross the main street and start walking up my side of the street where I came from, towards the parking garage. Shit. I followed this guy a little, wanting to say, "Yo dude, I just saw you, who are you? WTF are you?" I just watched as he did the exact same thing as before. He walked up the sidewalk does end just before the parking garage, and he stepped out into the street, walking past the point where I originally saw him. I'm thinking, this can't be the effing Twilight Zone, can it? Now please note again, grey hoodie, black shorts, and the distinct socks. I mention my past experiences because I'm naturally always aware of my surroundings, and those experiences just enhance that. I've been in shady situations, and have been in and avoided and gotten an upper hand by being very observant. Some fights and other stuff. Just a point of reference as you learn to pay attention to details is all, so the same. Strangely enough, I started seeing, I think, like shadow people and things, you know? Corner of the eye stuff that you know you saw. Could it be weirdly connected? Anyway, thanks. 18. This glitch happened to a dear friend of mine, Yancy. But as I'm involved in the glitch, I will start with the beginning. It was a Saturday night, and I was invited to a dinner party with another friend of mine, Tyrone. So it was maybe 7:45 p.m., and I went to Tyrone's house. We were chatting, and then around 8:30 p.m., we went grocery shopping for the dinner party. That was going to take place at some other friend's house. We went to the dinner party, then we went out to a bar. Listened to music and danced, and then went back home. And the next day, Sunday, I was chatting with Yancy via Facebook and WhatsApp, and she told me she saw me on the day before. I brushed it off, and continued chatting about something else. Around dinner time, Yancy and Tyrone went to a nearby restaurant and invited me to join them. I went, and this was the moment I heard about the strange event that took place on Saturday. I asked my friend where did she see me, and she told me it was in Baker Street around 8 p.m. Then she proceeded to tell me that she was on the bus, and she saw me in Baker Street with a guy. The guy was taller than me, maybe about 6 feet, and he had a hoodie on, dark clothing, and a blonde beard. She said it looked like I was on a date with the guy, or at least I had a crush on him. I was confused and told her I did not know such a person, and was not in that place at 8 p.m. My friend looked at me completely dumbfounded, and asked if I was making fun of her. I said I wasn't, and that I was not on Baker Street at 8 p.m. on Saturday, and I did not know a guy like that at all. I came up with a theory that she saw a person that looked like me. Yancy was adamant that the person she saw was in fact me. It wasn't someone that looked like me. It was me. Same hair color, the same outfit, the same face, the same expressions. It is important to mention that I am not very common looking, as I have long bleached blonde hair, a fringe, and I dress in black all the time, so I'm not the most common human being, at least in my country. My theory is that my friend saw another reality, like a parallel universe. As for sure in this universe, I was not in that place at that time with that guy. What do you think about this story? 19. My two glitch moments. First, it was a song by Blake Shelton's, Who Are You When I'm Not Looking? I'd heard the song a while back. I still love it, except I cringe a little. Let me explain. I don't know when it first came out, but the radio station clearly said new song by Joe Nichols. I listened to it a few times, and I'd seen the video with Joe featured in it. Not an issue. And it happened wasn't that late since I heard it. Then I heard the station say Blake Shelton's We Know OK. I didn't give it much thought, I know artists exchange songs, etc. Then came the interview with someone talking to Blake about everything, love, etc. Then it went south for me. They asked him about the song I mentioned. You could have robbed me of everything, I wouldn't know it. I froze. Blake mentioned that the song was offered to Joe Nichols, and he passed on it. I know to this day I heard him sing it first. As I checked the video, the same as before. You cannot convince me differently. 2. A smaller glitch. A friend of my third nephew had a friend come over a few months into mid-2019, I think. The friend was named Bacchus. I heard him mention that he was going to get an iOS phone. He said the Android wasn't in his budget. I thought it's strange. He's an Android buff, just brushed it off. Some time passed, and I asked which iOS phone did he get. I got a weird look from him, and he said he doesn't like iOS, only Android. Again, I froze a bit, and a few days later, Bacchus shows up, and I asked him. He gave me the same look. Said he'd never said that, and so on, I promise you. I heard him say that, I'm quite sure. I don't want another one of these things ever again, but from these stories, I will pay better attention. 20. I recently moved in with my mother in Utah from Idaho to get some medical issues taken care of. I was using the desk in her room for my laptop. I had seated myself there when I noticed a Polaroid photograph face down on the floor near the wall. As I picked it up, I saw there was a tape scar on the back, like it had been taped into a collage or something. When I turned it over, I was shocked to see it was a picture of my son when he was in about 1st or 2nd grade, and the caption was written, containing his name and Pinewood Derby. What was remarkable was I wrote it after my stroke in tremulous letters. But I never sent this picture to her. Further, all the stuff I brought with me is in the basement. How did the picture get here? Well, obviously it must have been in my things, but how did it get under my mom's desk? We speculated about this and threw out one theory after another to try to explain it. For example, a miniature black hole swallowed it and spit it out there from the other end. I brought it to show and forgot. I could not explain it. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Glitch Monthly, number 12. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like me to feature in a future video, be it glitch, true scary, paranormal, or whatever else I do, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. There we go, lovely. Obviously, thanks to everyone whose stories were in this video. Special thanks to the subscribers who swooped in and saved the day there, because I'm always lucky to have a few stories on standby. And that helped wrap this video up nicely. Okay, someone in chat wants me to put them in a cage. Well, maybe later, we'll see. We'll see how the evening goes. I generally like to start with a bit of chit-chat first. Okay, on that note, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.